Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Championship. My name's Alex Goldschmidt, your official commentator, and welcome to the Garden of England. Brands Hatch Indy is our showcase point for round 2 out of 10. 1.929 kilometres of length, 1.198 miles in length as well. 24 laps per race itself. And we are based in West Kingsdown. My name's Alex Goldschmidt, as I said, and our broadcast director from Simply Race is Mike Yao. Coming into this weekend, or evening thereof, we have quite an interesting tussle at the top of the field. Effectively, that we have the likes of Dan Kell, Matt Richards, and Sam Fowler coming into this week's event, separated by just 3 points. Lewis McGlade rounds out the top 4 ahead of Max Tad, Chris Butcher, Ben Willis, Jack Nicholls, Mike Bell, and Scott Sovic rounding out the top 10. They are covered by just 14 points coming into this round. So as a result of that, Dan Kell will start race 1 with a maximum ballast of 60 kilos, 54 for Matt Richards, 48 for Sam Fowler, and then all the way down to 6 for Scott Sovic, with Mike Bell having 12 kilos on his Vauxhall Astra. Jack Nicholls in the Mercedes A45 from Kings Racing will have 18. Ben Willis will have 24, 30 kilos for Chris Butcher, and Max Tad will have 36, along with Lewis McGlade having 42 kilos. We do have quite a few new additions, and we welcome them to the championship here at Brands Hatch. So they're going to complete everything with us as we're into the throes of qualifying. 15 minutes in total. There's Aidan Millward from Option 13 Simsport, one of 4 new BMW Motorsport entries here, and he's currently running in 17th position in the 67. And that looks like Costas Avram and the MG just behind. We also have Ben Brown, Sean King, and Chris Wilson, all running a trio of Cam Sports Mercedes A45s. E-Team Brit make their debut here in the Touring Car UK Series, with Max Spooner, their team boss, or team manager, along with Sandro Ballesteros and Bradley Brockies. They're running in the 63, 19 and 105 respectively. Ben Brown, Sean King and Chris Wilson will run with the numbers 77, 23 and 68. Then we also have the Subaru Levorg pairing of Kieran Shanks and Robert Strachan in the 16 and 36. And then Aidan Millward, who we've just seen on screen, is out on there. There's Sean King from Cam Sport going tracking on the grass outside of Paddock Hill Bend. He's just going to keep out of the way there. 27 cars circulating on the grid here at Brands Hatch with 11 minutes and 39 seconds to go. Sam Fowler leading the way with a 47.436. Ben Hamlet in the SRR Motorsport 69 BMW goes to P5, but instantly gets deposed down to P6 thanks to teammate Max Tad, who goes in with the 47.448. The lap record for qualifying around Brands Hatch in the British Touring Car Championship is none other than Tom Ingram. 2016, he set the record of a 47.990. We are quite convincingly below that by about just over 0.6 of a second. The race lap record was set by Matt Neal, of all people, in 2011 with the 48.498. The average speed on a lap here will be around about 90 miles an hour in terms of qualifying, and about 88 or 89 miles an hour in terms of race pace. You can just see how much Ben Willis is hustling his Drake Racing 85 Subaru Levorg out through Clearways and through Clark Curve, down onto the Brabham Straight, keeping to the right-hand side of the track. There's Alexander van der Voorde in the 38 Ford Focus. So I think someone's gone off a bit on the inside of Paddock Hill Bend. Alex goes 13th, but then goes pretty much straight on until Druids. I had to lock up the brakes. There's Costas Avram, the FMP MG6 GT in the number 26, going through the Haywoods Hill. And there is one. So Phil Morby there in the 14 Subaru. There is the number 29 of Jack Nicholls. quite a few drivers now going on their out lap with 9 minutes and 45 seconds to go. Quite a short lap here around at Brands Hatch. So the drivers will start to get some heat into the tyres and the brakes on the out lap here. So it was a tough test here at Brands Hatch as some of them come through Druids and go down towards the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend before the Cooper Straight. We're heading into the very quick section at Surtees and McLaren before trying to put the brakes on before Clearways. I think Jack Nicholls just kicks up a little bit of grass there going through into Surtees. Matt Richards from Zancho Simsport goes up into P8 in the number 4. There's Ben Brown. Looks like they've got the Anxiety UK logos on the side of all 3 cars, representing a very, very good cause there. So at the moment, Kieran Shanks, one of the new guys from Frammy Autosport in the 16, has gone on provisional pole, and that is a 47.154. Oh, now that was one of the Rage Racing MGs that went very sideways. There's Sandro Ballesteros with, that is Kel in the Ford Focus from Sancho, going down the main straightaway. And Kel at the moment is currently P11. And the top 12 separated by just over half a second. Phil Morby rounds out the top 13. Max Spooner and Bradley Brocky's not yet set a comparative lap time, but as Sandro Ballesteros has done so and has put in a 49.329. Sam Fowler from SRR Motorsport goes 7th ahead of Phil Morby, who makes an increase of around 5 positions. There's Dan Hyde from Cadan Casual Apex, currently running in 21st in qualification. We're fast approaching the halfway point of the qualifying session. There's Jack Nicholls going through very quickly at Graham Hill Bend before the Cooper Straight, and then gets past the number 23 of King. That's Sean King, currently 19th, just over a second off the pace. Quite a few drivers after the action at Donington Park have incurred not just grid place penalties, but also penalty points on their licence. So the drivers that have received 5-place grid drops for race 1 here at Brands Hatch are as follows: Matt Richards, Alexander van der Voorde, Lewis McGlade. Then you've also got Dan Kell, Daniel Hyde, Jack Nicholls and Scott Mitchell. They all get a 5-place grid penalty for the first race, and Matthew Clipp in the second of the Cadan Casual Apex MGs, who's just about to make his way out onto the circuit, has actually been given a back of the grid demotion after Donington Park. All the drivers apart from Matthew Clipp have got 1 penalty point on their licence, and Matthew Clipp has got 3, and you can have a maximum of 8 before it is decided by the Virtual Motorsport Organisation, the governing body of the Touring Car UK Championship, as to what the next step will be. There is Chris Butcher in one of the 3 Smile Power Racing Astras. Chris is currently 6th in the standings on 32 points, equal with Max Tad from our SRR Motorsport, as we head our way into the final third of this qualification session. And Chris Butcher is actually top of the timesheets at the moment. He's just been the first driver in this session to go sub 47 seconds by just 2 1,000ths. So at the moment it is Butcher from Shanks, Pad, Bell, Sovic, Nicholls, Mitchell, Fowler, Morby and Ben Hamlet, all separated by 0.526 of a second. Matt Richards rounds out the top 11. He's 26 thousandths behind Ben Hamlet in the battle for 10th position. There's Shanks going sideways, trying to get as best his way through the curb, getting a bit sideways and locking up under brakes. And the Subaru Levorg is one of the rear-wheel drive machineries that we have in the Touring Car UK Championship as he goes sideways through into Graham Hill Bend. Nicely controlled there. The other car that will be of that same powertrain type is going to be the BMW 1 Series, of which we have 7. So here's a bit of a replay here. That's Max Spooner from E-Team Brits. There's one of the Rage Racing cars. Spooner loses it. Now, I'm not too sure if he went a bit too hot coming out of Clark Curve there, but he managed to get it tracking the right way. Now, Max has set a lap time of a 51.2. He's gone personal best in sectors 1 and 2 now. He's going to come through Clark Curve a bit more composed from the E-Team Brit team manager. As Lewis McGlade now goes 11th. Not too far behind Max Spooner is Jack Nicholls. Now, does Nicholls improve? Spooner does improve and goes P26 on a 49.938. Jack Nicholls goes P3 with a 47.330. But the gap between Chris Butcher and Kieran Shanks is only 0.078 of a second. There's Aidan Millward currently rounding out the top 20 by just over a second, as he's gone and used a bit more. That's a bit of opposite lock there. I think the rear end trying to break traction. So that did not help his lap in any sort of way. Last lap was a 48.046, and if he didn't have the car going sideways, he probably would have gone a bit under, I think, 48 seconds. There's Chris Wilson from Cam Sport in the 68 Mercedes A45. On an outlap at the moment, as we are into the last 3 minutes of qualifying, as both Matt Richards and Sam Fowler do improve. Now, all new competitors with us here tonight will have to run with 45 kilos of ballast through all 3 races. It's a stipulation within the Touring Car UK Championship guidelines, as Phil Morby I just spotted, going a bit wide coming out of paddock, but still managed to keep the foot planted to the floor. So another personal best in Sector 1 for Chris Wilson. He now comes through into Surtees, into McLaren. Brakes before clearways. Again up on Sector 2. And round through Clark Curve onto the Brabham Straight. Let's see if he betters a 48.768 in the Mercedes. Going to the far left of the circuit, and he beats it by a convincing margin. And that is a 48.096. There's Alexander van der Voorde on an outlap in the 38 Ford Focus. So drivers might have an opportunity if they get out and cross the line before the checkered flag falls. They'll have a chance at a flying lap. So if they want to actually get out on the circuit and make improvements, they've really got to do it now. Van der Voorde up, and Robert Strachan Frammy Autosport having a moment at Paddock Hill Bend. There's Van der Voorde. Let's see if he's up in Sector 2. Yep, he's done a personal best. Comes around the final corner through Clark Curve onto the Brabham Straight. Let's see if the Focus driver improves here. 47.756 is his best lap time. And that is fractionally better. Fractionally better. Right, let's have a look at the replay here. Here's Strachan. He's come out of the pits, and he's actually nerfed the wall, and he's spat out Scott Mitchell. So Scott Mitchell was trying to go past. So Strachan already, he's done a 47.612. That's put him P14 in the Subaru Levorg at the moment. Just under 20 seconds to go, and Butcher, with his effort, looks to have secured provisional pole position. He did have a grid place penalty, but that was overturned pending a steward's inquiry, and he just got a warning. There's Ben Hamlet. He's gone 11th, and the checkered flag is out. That is it. The 15-minute session in qualifying for rounds 4, 5, and 6 here at Brands Hatch, or races 4, 5, and 6, as we're now round 2 out of 10. So Hamlet will still get a lap in. 18.6 through sector 1. And there's Max Tad just behind. As Ben Hamlet's taken the front end off of that car quite convincingly. So that's not what he wanted. So he's had to put that into the pits. But that pretty much has completed the session as the final couple of cars. Looks like one of the Cam Sport cars is just crossing the line now. So that is it for qualification. Provisionally speaking, Chris Butcher is on provisional pole. And he is ahead of Kieran Shanks in the 16 Frammy Autosport. Jack Nicholls and Scott Mitchell will both get grid penalties, so Jack will start 8th. But let's have a look at the starting order. This is obviously not taking into account the grid drop. So it's Chris Butcher from Smile Power Racing on the front row on pole position. Kieran Shanks will start alongside on the second grid slot. Jack Nicholls and Scott Mitchell showing as 3rd and 4th, but they will start 8th and 9th respectively. I'm just going to keep an eye on who is where. Max Tad and Dan Kell are 5th and 6th in that session. Ahead of Mike Bell, Sam Fowler, Scott Sovic, Matt Richards round out the top 10. Richards will drop to 15th as a result of that. Ben Hamlet and quite a few others. So Lewis McGlade, Daniel Hyde will all get 5 place grid penalties. They'll have to serve them now in comparison to what happened earlier on. So we are just waiting. So these are the qualifying results. So Butcher, best lap time of 46.998. Kieran Shanks, Jack Nicholls, Scott Mitchell, Max Tad, Dan Kell, Mike Bell, Sam Fowler, Scott Sovic, and Matt Richards round out the top 10, separated by just over 0.3 of a second. Then it's Ben Hamlet, Phil Morby, Lewis McGlade, Robert Strachan, Kostas Avram, Daniel Sattery, Alexander van der Voorde, Ben Willis, Aidan Millward, and Sean King rounding out the top 20. Chris Wilson, Ben Brown, Daniel Hyde, Peter Bennett, Sandro Ballesteros, Max Spooner, and Bradley Brockies round out the 27 strong, with Matthew Clipp not having set a lap time, as he will effectively start from the back of the grid. So we're just going to take a brief break, and we'll be back very shortly with the first of 3 races here at Brands Hatch. Starters orders here for the first of 3 races here at Brands Hatch for the Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Championship. The amended grid is as follows. Chris Butcher and Kieran Shanks will be on the front row with Butcher on pole. That picks him up a point this season. With Max Tad, Mike Bell rounding out row 2. Sam Fowler and Scott Sovic, that's row 3. Jack Nicholls and Scott Mitchell, row 4. Ben Hamlet and Phil Morby, row 5. Dan Kell, Robert Strachan, Costas Avram, Matt Richards, Daniel Slattery, Ben Willis, Lewis McGlade, Aidan Millward, Sean King and Chris Wilson round out the top 20 with Ben Brown, Alexander van der Vude, Peter Bennett, Sandro Ballesteros, Max Spooner, Bradley Brockies, Daniel Hyde and Matthew Clipp rounding out the 28-strong grid as we now go on our way on the formation lap here at Brands Hatch. A fantastic circuit that has hosted the likes of the DTM. It's also hosted Formula One, the British Touring Car Championship, amongst many others. And the first British touring car race that actually took place here was in 1958. Quite a long old time ago, and look how things have changed. We're racing on it virtually here. And a big thank you to Simply Race for providing the live stream coverage. We're broadcasting via YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and I think even Periscope, if memory serves me correctly. So the drivers now getting themselves set, ready for racing for the first time. First of 3 24-lap encounters here. The field starts to make its way through towards Clark Curve, or they head onto the starting grid. So we Butcher and Shanks. They're now going to get into position here. And with the camber, it's going to be quite difficult to get away, but we know that the BMWs are renowned for their lightning start. The top 10, it's Butcher, Shanks, Tad, Bell, Fowler, Sovic, Nicholls, Mitchell, Hamlet and Morby. As we wait for the rest of the field to get into formation. Not a lot of room for 28 cars to go racing on, but we are waiting for the red lights to go on the starting gantry. So the lights going on the gantry. And we are off and away. And what a great start from Chris Butcher. But look at Kieran Shanks going towards the outside through Paddock and Bend. Is he going to get the lead before they even go into the apex? He does. But he's about half a car length. Butcher up the inside, up the Haywoods Hill for the first time. Jack Nicholls looks to try up the inside, up into P4 already. And that is from 7th on the grid. Scott Mitchell looks to be just outside of the top 10 as Shanks runs wide and goes up the inside of Butcher. Door tangling as he dares. And there is Max Tad from SRR trying to get past the SPR, the Smile Power Racing Astra, as they head into McLaren and then Clearways for the first time. And look at how quick Jack Nicholls is closing on Max Tad. He's going to get into the slipstream here as the Mercedes. But Shanks leads after lap 1. 23 to go. And Tad goes defensive on Nicholls. And a bit sideways there from the BMW from SRR as Nicholls again gets back into position just behind the BMW. As Tad gets really close on the braking. And oh, Nicholls gets turned around there. Tries to go up the inside. And one of the SPR Astras again going wide. So some drivers trying to make positional gains, others looking to work in formation. And then it's very much the case for the SRR trio of Tad, Fowler and Hamlet. There's Chris Wilson from Campsport, and the 68 Mercedes is up to P14 already. Just behind him, he has got Daniel Slattery. Jack Nicholls, in the meantime, has got a recovery drive and a half to do. He's 15.7 seconds away from the leader, but he's down in P27. Matthew Clipp at the minute has DNF'd, unfortunately, in the early stages of the race. As there is Wilson again, and just behind Slattery has a bit of a tank slapper. And it's just got Ben Brown in the sister Campsport 77 Mercedes for close company. Let's have a look at the replay here. Well, we're going to go to a replay now. So Nicholls tries to force it up the inside. and he gets, yeah, basically gets turned. Now, that's down to the race director to see what happens. And I'm just going to have a quick look on who has had the option tyres, which on this case is the soft compound. And Jack Nicholls and Scott Mitchell are using them in this race. And someone's saying, I'm imagining Jack Nicholls commentating to himself as he goes around. Well, that depends if you want to ask the man himself. So at the moment, Kieran Shanks has a lead of 1.9 seconds, approximately, ahead of Chris Butcher. And it's Max Tad, Ben Hamlet, Sam Fowler. So a trio of BMWs in the top 5. And I'm just keeping an eye, looking down the order. Aidan Millward in the sole, option 13 Sim Sport. And the 67 is currently up to 11th place ahead of Alexander van der Voorde. Dan Kell from Sancho Sim Sport, who came into this round as the leader of the standings with just a single solitary point between himself and teammate Matt Richards. Third in the standings is Sam Fowler, I believe. Ben Hamlet's yet to score. So at the moment, I think in many respects, Shanks has actually earned himself a bonus point for leading in the race. Scott Mitchell runs wide coming out of the Graham Hill bend and gets back on the circuit. So we're now on board with Lewis McGlade from Sancho Simsport in the 78 Focus. And Lewis is currently in P9 at the moment, trying to chase down Phil Morby in the Subaru Levorg. And just behind Lewis McGlade is Scott Mitchell in the lead Kings Racing Mercedes, the number 22. You can just see how much of a compression zone there is. Obviously, they don't feel it in the sim racing world, but very different when you look at the cars as they go through there. Out through Druids, down the hill, down towards the left-hander at Graham Hill. And Phil Morby trying to close up on Scott Sovic. Battle between them. Well, you can just see on your screen that it's just under 6/10 between Phil Morby and Lewis McGlade. And Mitchell closing on the back bumper of the Focus. Both cars front-wheel drive, but the Subaru rear-wheel drive. And good to see that the race is watching with us, cheering on Scott. I think you guys need to cheer on Jack as well. Jack's made a recovery. He's got past Sandro Ballesteros up to P23 now. But Jack was looking good to be in the top 3 at the initial stages. But Shanks has capitalised and run away with the cat that's got the cream. And he's got a 3-second gap between himself and Chris Butcher. But this is going to help Chris Butcher's title offensive no end. And we've had both retirements from the Cadan Casual Apex drivers of Daniel Hyde and Matthew Clipp. It's a real shame. So that's brought us down to 26 drivers. Good to see that the E-Team Brit guys are trying to do their best. This is their first foray into Touring Car Championships here in the sim racing world. Here's Morby on the back bumper of Scott Sovic. And there we go. The race is now cheering on Jack too. Thank you for your support, guys. Really good to have you along. So Morby just behind Scott Sovic. And at the minute, Scott Sovic is actually the lowest place Smile Power Racing Vauxhall Astra in the 55. So Morby is only about 7.5 seconds behind the leader. Make that 7.6, but he's 0.3. Here's Matt Richards battling away. And that is with Robert Strachan. So Richards and Strachan have been swapping places. So the number 4 Sancho Simsport Ford Focus. Now in its full livery. And just up ahead of them, they have got Peter Bennett in the 87 Rage Racing MG6. And then Ben Brown and Sean King not too far ahead either. I think that's Sean King just up ahead in the 23, as Richards being swarmed all over the back of by Strachan. And that's pretty brave if you want to try and put it around the outside of somebody at Druids, but Strachan going to get past Richards as they go through Graham Hill Bend. Strachan runs a little bit wide coming out of the corner onto the AstroTurf. through into Surtees, into McLaren. As then Richards has just got past. Let's just have a look. That is Peter Bennett, and Strachan has also got past too. Now on the roof cam for Scott Sovic, who has got Morby, as Phil Morby, in the 14 Subaru Levorg GT. So they've come down the hill from Druids, down into Graham Hill Bend, down along the Cooper Straight. And Morby's getting a really good tow here, going through into Surtees, into McLaren. Then into the left at Clearways, and then it's another left through into Clark Curve. Well, they put the power down. Down the Bradman Straight they come, and both drivers decide to go to the right-hand side of the circuit. And they move across the left in order to get the approach right for Paddock Hill Bend. Scott Sovic goes defensive. Phil Morby keeping with him. Just up ahead, they've got Sam Fowler, and Sovic trying to go up the inside of Fowler through Druids and makes the move stick. That's a great move from the Astra. As Matt Richards now battling away on the left-hand side of your screen with Sean King from Cam Sports. And Richards looks like he's got the move done. Oh, Morby spun out. Morby spun out on the Cooper Straight. I'm not too sure if there was contact there or whether he's just lost it on his own. Where is Jack? Jack is currently 22nd at the moment. Lace B9, BY9 on the official Simply Race YouTube channel. So Matt Richards now has got a bit of daylight between himself and also King in the 23. Let's have a look at this replay. Here's Phil Morby, and he's just lost the back end. He's tried to put the power down, and the back end has just gone away from him. He's had no contact with anybody. So the number 14. There's Alexander Van der Voorde ahead of Chris Wilson and Daniel Slattery. This is the battle for P13. Slattery trying to use a cutback offensive in the MG. Can't make it work, go through Clearways or through Clark Curve. Fastest lap of the race so far is by our current leader, Kieran Shanks, who is he's now about 7.4 seconds up the road from Chris Butcher. As here's Peter Bennett being having one thrown up the inside of him by Ben Willis, and there's Jack Nichols in the Kings Racing. Mercedes 23, and he's not that well, he's not that far behind, sorry, 29, my apologies there. So Nichols definitely has got the bit between the teeth. Red mist has come down behind the visor, and he's trying to keep pace. Getting a bit closer through Surtees and through McLaren, and he goes up the inside. Nice move by Jack Nichols to recover another position. That's up into 21st place as he comes through the exit of Clearways, through Clark Curve, down onto the Bradman Straights. 14 laps down, now onto lap number 15. Here's Scott Mitchell, and that's up the inside of Lewis McGlade from Sancho Simsport. So good composed drive from Scott Mitchell. One of the guys from the race as well. He's one of their F1 journalists. Known Scott for quite a few years. Very good guy. Now resides in Sweden. And McGlade trying to go back up the inside of the Mercedes. And there is someone else just wanting to capitalise. That is Millward. Aidan Millward. Can't get past Scott Mitchell. Mitchell trying to use the old bump draft technique. And he's going towards the outside of Lewis McGlade there. But he's going to have to swing it back in and see how he goes. And that's a good run from Scott Mitchell. And that's nearly allowing Aidan Millward to go up the inside of the number 22 Mercedes. But very neatly composed there from Scott Mitchell. Ed Straw, Stephen Jordan. Good evening, Ed. Hurry up, Scott and Jack. Yeah, Jack's got a bit more work to do, but he's up in P20. Scott's still in P9. Leader now 9.5 seconds ahead. As that's very much hugging the curve as best you dare from Scott Mitchell. We're now on to lap number 17 of 24 here at the first of 3 races here at Brands Hatch. Shanks lead ahead of Butcher. Now we're going to come to a replay. There's the number 23 of Cam Sports King. Oh, he's absolutely flummoxed it into the barriers. Right. So that's not a good one for Sean King. That's put him down to 25th position. And good evening, Andrew Vanderberg, as well. And I will take that comment on board. Thank you very much. So at the moment, Kieran Shanks leads. Chris Butcher in second. Ben Hamlet in third, ahead of Mike Bell, Max Tad, Scott Sovic, Sam Fowler, Lewis McGlade, Scott Mitchell and Aidan Millward. That's your top 10. And it's Phil Morby, who recovered from that spin a bit earlier on. And he's back up into 11th position. 12th place is Dan Cowell. There's Kieran Shanks, the leader. That's 18 laps completed, 6 to go. As he makes his way through. There's Lewis McGlade in the Ford Focus from Zancho Simsport. And quite a few drivers, 13 of them out of the field, have actually opted to use the option tyre, the soft compound. And if I'm honest, none of the Zancho Simsport drivers have opted to do so. That includes McGlade. And at the moment, he is the highest placed Zimsho. As there was a move there. That was Sovic, I think, on Mitchell. Sovic now up into P8. Mitchell trying to force the issue, trying to go up the inside through Surtees and McLaren. Can't get through quite yet. But I'm just having a look at the spread between 5th and 11th place. Not that much in it. Less than about a couple of seconds, as there's a great move up the inside by Phil Morby on Aidan Millward for 10th position through the apex of Paddock Hill Bend. Millward trying to close up on him. So Morby closing on the Mercedes of Mitchell, who tries to go up the inside of Sovic through Surtees. As one of the SRR Motorsport cars has gone off. Oh, and it's taken off both Mitchell and Morby at the same time. So one of the SRR trio, one of the BMWs, had a moment there. So that has changed the order. And that was Max Tad, I believe. He's dropped down the order like a stone. And that is a real shame for both Scott Mitchell and also Phil Morby as a result of that. But they look to be still circulating. Let's have a look at the replay, shall we? So I think this is Max Tad going off the circuit. It's missed two cars and gone careering off into both the side of Mitchell and Morby at the same time. So we're coming to the conclusion of this first of three races here. And there is Mike Bell being closed on by Sam Fowler. So it's Smile Power Racing against SRR Motorsport. There's another replay coming up here. There's a little bit of contact between, that is, I think, one of the Zancho Simsport cars. Or was that Lewis McGlade? Slightest of rubs. Yep, just collects Mitchell first, and then it's a pinball effect with Morby just afterwards. So that's ended Max Tad's race, but Scott Mitchell still circulating in 9th place and Phil Morby in 10. 10th. So I'm wondering how they managed to get back on the circuit so quickly. So Jack Nicholls back up to 17th position now in the number 29 Kings Racing Mercedes A45 coming through Paddock Hill Bend. There's more changes, as I've just seen that Chris Wilson is changing positions with the likes of Daniel Slattery and Robert Strachan for around about 14th place. If you do want to get involved, use the hashtags hashtag TCUK or hashtag VMO to get involved. There's Ben Hamlet closing on Chris Butcher. Now, this has been a battle that's been sort of waiting in the wings to happen. Front-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive as they go through Surtees into McLaren. But up the road, Kieran Shanks from Framey Autosport in the 16 doing a great job. Here's Chris Wilson with Alexander van der Voorde. This is a battle for 13th place as they come through down into Graham Hill. And van der Voorde trying to go up towards the inside through into Surtees. Oh, turns the Cam Sport cart around. So not exactly a good run for the number 68 of Wilson there in the Mercedes. So very shortly, I think we are now on the last lap here at Brands Hatch for race 1 of 3 with Kieran Shanks quite convincingly leading the way. He got away from Butcher as Hamlet has got past Butcher for 2nd place. And that is it. Kieran Shanks wins the first race here at Brands Hatch. Here's Ben Hamlet. He managed to get past Chris Butcher. And the SRR Motorsport driver takes 2nd. Chris Butcher will round up the top 3. And there is Aidan Millward, who's just ahead of Scott Mitchell. So Bell takes 4th, Fowler in 5th, Scott Sovic, Lewis McGlade. Aidan Millward finishes just fractionally ahead of Scott Mitchell with Phil Morby, still rounding out the top 10. Then it's Dan Kell in 11th place, but a very dominant performance from Kieran Shanks in the number 16 Framey Autosport Subaru Levorg GT. Ben Hamlet in the 69 SRR BMW 125i M Sport, and Chris Butcher in the Smile Power Racing Vauxhall Astra round out the top 3. Mike Bell, Sam Fowler and Scott Sovic round out the top 6 ahead of Lewis McGlade from Zancho Simsport. Option 13 Simsport's Aidan Millward. Scott Mitchell from Kings Racing in the 22 takes 9th ahead of Phil Morby from Morby Motorsport. And it's Dan Kell in the 89 ahead of Matt Richards in the number 4. Robert Strachan in the 36 ahead of Alexander van der Voorde and Ben Willis from Drake Racing in the 85 Subaru. Jack Nicholls recovers to 16th place in the number 29 ahead of Daniel Slattery. Ben Brown, Costa Savram, Sandro Ballesteros makes it a top 20 finish for E-Team Brit for the first time in 20th place ahead of Max Spooner, Chris Wilson, Max Tad, had a DNF according to Peter Bennett from Rage Racing with Bradley Brockies, Sean King, Daniel Hyde and Matthew Clipp rounding out the order. That's conclusion of race 1 out of 3, and we'll be up very shortly for race 2 here at Brands Hatch. We're now underway, getting set for our second race of the evening here for the Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Championship. 28 cars getting ready to go on the formation lap here at Brands Hatch. So the grid will be as follows. Kieran Shanks, who took the win in race 1, will start on pole position and will have 60 kilos of ballast added to his Subaru. Ben Hamlet in the SRR Motorsport BMW number 69 will be alongside on the front row, followed by Chris Butcher and Mike Bell. That's row 2. Sam Fowler and Scott Sovic will round out the top 3 rows ahead of Lewis McGlade, Aidan Millward, Scott Mitchell and Phil Morby, who round out the top 10. Dan Kell, Matt Richards, Robert Strachan, Alexander van der Voorde, Ben Willis, Jack Nichols, Daniel Slattery, Ben Brown, Costas Avram and Sandro Ballesteros round out the top 20. Completing the 28-strong grid is Max Spooner, Chris Wilson, Max Tad, Peter Bennett, Bradley Brockies, Sean King, Daniel Hyde and Matthew Clipp. That is your 28 strong. So we just wait for the latter few cars on the grid to line up. And there is Max Tad, who's meant to be in 23rd position. So just waiting for the final few cars to get into position. Looks like there is a gap on one of the rows as the lights now start to ignite on the gantry. And we are off and away once again. Kieran Shanks gets another great start as Ben Hamlet tries to go towards the outside. There's absolute carnage heading towards Paddock Hill Bend. There's the 77 involved. I think Costas Avram involved there as well. As all the leaders being turned around, Hamlet's gone into the back of, and that's caused more carnage down towards Druids. Shanks going down the. Yeah, it wasn't as clean. It's been an absolute free for all, and I'm sure that race control and the race director will be having a look at every single incident. There has been at least 3 to 4 incidents, I count. As there is Kieran Shanks all the way down in 17th position behind one of the Zancho Simsport cars. It looks like Chris Butcher has got the lead at the moment in the Vauxhall Astra ahead of Sam Fowler, Lewis McGlade. Let's have a look at the replay here. And it's 3 into 1 doesn't go. And it looks like Brown was trying to go in the inside of Avram with Nichols on the outside, and it just was 3 into 1 didn't really go. Nichols then collects Avram as a result, who tags the back bumper of the 77, and the car gets spat out heading towards Paddock Hill, and then the same happens to Avram, so it's a domino effect there. So Shanks now making his way back up the order, and that is through past the number 23 of Sean King there, who's got Aidan Millward just behind. New best lap time of 48.139 of Chris Butcher. As they come down towards the Haywoods Hill, up towards Druids, as it's nearly 3 abreast going through the Exeter Druids and 2 MGs, one of which is the number 92 of Matthew Clipp, who's come surging through the order, but as a result of some of the altercations that we saw earlier on. Chris Butcher doesn't have much of a lead ahead of Sam Fowler. It's about 0.8 of a second. Lewis McGlade in 3rd, Mike Bell in 4th, Ben Hamlet in 5th ahead of Robert Strachan. Sam Fowler sets the fastest lap of the race, 47.799. Let's have a look at another replay here. There is Shanks that's when he got turned around earlier on, and then it all just kicked off. It was very reminiscent of Sebastian Vettel's incident at Interlagos a few years back when he was with Red Bull in the battle for the title. So Chris Butcher still leads. Sam Fowler and Lewis McGlade trying to close up. And then you've also got Mike Bell. So you've got 2 Astras, 2 BMWs, and a Focus in the top 5. Add a Subaru with Robert Strachan. You've got another different manufacturer in the top 6. Here's Chris Wilson trying to defend from Matthew Klipp from Cadan Casual Apex. And Klipp has to pull back. Some moves happening down the order by Max Spooner and Sandro Ballesteros. Here's Mike Bell. We're on board with the Astra from Smile Power Racing in the number 5 through Surtees into McLaren. Now through Clearways. Going up the inside of the Focus there. That's Lewis McGlade. Exiting Clark Curve. Down onto the Brabham Straight. We have had, unfortunately, a couple of DNFs. One of them is Jack Nichols, and the other one is Matt Richards. So we still have 26 cars circulating. Lap 6 out of 24. And whilst Bell and Hamlet are just behind McGlade, McGlade is having to battle with Bell, and that's allowing Hamlet to come into the mix. And if it becomes a trio of fighters there, Strachan could even close up on them. Then you've got Max Tad. Matthew Klipp going a bit deep, going grass tracking through Surtees and McLaren. And that has allowed Kieran Shanks, the pole sitter, after winning race 1. Here's Mike Bell trying to go a maximum send up the inside of Lewis McGlade. Can't quite do it yet. There's a better run going up the Haywoods Hill into Druids. There's Hamlet in the 69 BMW just behind from SRR Motorsport. Strachan, Tad, Mitchell, Van der Voorde and Kell. That is your top 10. That's the remainder of the top 10 there. So we're going on to lap number 8 out of 24 here. And Butcher is not out of the woods yet in the number 65 Smile Power Racing Astra. And I'm quite impressed with Kieran Shanks that even with 60 kilos of ballast, he's still trying to catch those in front, and he's catching Wilson in the CamSport 68 Mercedes. He's about 6.5 tenths of a second behind. Sean King has got past Scott Sovic and also Peter Bennett now. So Sean King on a recovery drive. There's Chris Wilson. Still trying to battle off Shanks now. You can just see how close it is. Matthew Klipp has been trying to get a bit further up the field. But he's got to move past the 2 objects in front. And that is Shanks in the Subaru. And Wilson in the Mercedes. There's Sam Fowler trying to close up on the back bumper of Chris Butcher for the lead of the race through Druids. Still very close. It's about half a car length between the pair. Fowler's really got the run going through into Surtees, into the right at McLaren. Now through into Clearways. Through Clark Curve. Battle behind them is between McGlade, Bell and Hamlet. And Sam Fowler's got a gap of about 1.5 seconds between himself and Lewis McGlade in the 78 Focus. But Butcher's still doing a really good job at the minute. There's Matthew Klipp on the right-hand side of your screen, and he's got Shanks and Wilson still battling away over what is 12th position. I think he's just waiting to see what happens in front. Not too far behind is Scott Sovic, who's about 1.8 seconds just adrift. As there's a little bit of a coming together there between Wilson and Shanks, and that's allowing Clip to go up the inside of Shanks through Druids. Nice spot by the MG driver, and he's going to try and keep it around the outside of Graham Hill Bend. Is he going to keep that? That's a brilliant manoeuvre from Clip there. Sent it up the inside of Shanks going through Druids, and then kept it planted around the outside. Very, very shortly. Apologies for the slight issue there with the screen there. But that was a brilliant move from Matthew Clip in the number 12. Sorry, in 12th place in the 92 MG. So the battle for the lead still going on, and they're going to come against backmarker traffic now. This is where it's going to get interesting, as that is one of the E-Team Brit cars just up ahead. That might be Bradley Brocky's, I believe. As the leads now come through, Clark Curve. Nice work by Bradley Brocky's to have that spatial awareness to just keep out of the way. And he's let Lewis McGlade pass. And this is the first outing for E-Team Brit, formed in latter part of last year. It's the sim racing team's sibling to Team Brit, run by Dave Player. So this battle at the front of the field is quite captivating, because you don't know whether Fowler's going to force Butcher into a mistake or whether Butcher is going to make a mistake, and how is that going to impact bringing Lewis McGlade into the party. But the top 9 separated, well, they're covered by just over 7 seconds, 7.2, down to Dan Kell. So we have Vauxhall leading ahead of BMW, followed by Ford. And Butcher trying to do all he can to keep Sam Fowler at bay as they go through Paddock Hill Bend. A little bit sideways from the rear end as it breaks traction on the Astra on the exit as they go through into Druids. Fowler's not got the measure of Butcher quite yet, but he's set the fastest lap of the race. As Lewis McGlade makes his way through. Then you've got Ben Hamlet and Max Tad. So the SRR Motorsport team, who so far, just trying to remember off memory here, coming into this round, that they are second in the standings on 69 points, with Sancho Simsport leading the way on 77. But obviously that's now changed because of the first set of results that we've just had. So lap number 15 of 24. Butcher still leading, but by a fraction. Fowler has got no real response at the minute. But it is a case of making sure that that mistake does transpire. Whether he forces it. Now think of it this way, that the option tyres have yet to be used by SRR Motorsport. Mike Bell, Scott Sovic and Chris Butcher from Smile Power Racing have already used their option compound tyres. They've used the soft option. And there's only 3 drivers, Ben Brown, Bradley Brockies and Dan Kell. Those are the only 3 drivers in this race that are using the soft option tyre here at Brands Hatch and Sam Fowler. So it's 10 laps to go. Fowler's got a good run coming out of Paddock Hill Bend, and he's looking towards the inside for the lead. Is he going to get it? Not quite yet. Butcher very, very recalcitrant in letting him get past. So good defensive manoeuvre there from Chris Butcher, but this has allowed Lewis McGlade to come into the fight. And McGlade has yet to use his option tyre, and he'll be doing that in the next race. That could be a very different prospect altogether. But now the gap between the top 3 from first to third is just under 0.8 of a second as we go on to lap number 16 of 24. Running order at the moment, it is Butcher, Fowler, McGlade, Tad, Hamlet, Bell, Kell, Mitchell, Van der Voorde, Strachan. That's the top 10. Clip, Slattery, Shanks, Wilson, Sovic, Millward, Morby, Bennett, Spooner and Ballesteros. That's the top 20. And then we've got Sean King, Ben Willis, Ben Brown and Bradley Brockies. As Costas Avram is the 3rd DNF along with Matt Richards and Jack Nichols. Daniel Hyde in 26th position, but is 3 laps down on Costas Avram. So if he completes the race, he will take 25th position. Sandro Ballesteros battling away with, I think that is Sean King in the Mercedes. And then he's got Ben Willis going towards his outside. And then here comes the other Cam Sport 77 Mercedes of Ben Brown. But he's kept ahead of Sandro. So pretty close in terms of the interval, as you can see on the right-hand corner of the bottom right-hand corner of the right-hand side of your screen. Not that much between each driver. You can just see how they're hustling their way through up towards the Hellwood Hill. Through into Druids. Defensive line taken by Sandro Ballesteros on Ben Brown. Brown will have the inside run now and clatters into the side of Ballesteros there, who goes a bit sideways, but through no fault of his own. It was just a coming together on that particular occasion. But the leaders still are line astern. They cannot be separated at this particular moment. We all know that the BMW has the better traction coming out of the corners, but Butcher seems to have that Smart Power Racing 65 Vauxhall Astra on the limit of adhesion to keep Sam Fowler at bay. McGlade has now dropped into the clutches of Max Tad, the sister SRR Motorsport, in the 35, currently in 4th place, and they've dropped Ben Hamlet by a considerable margin. Butcher goes to the inside on Druids, which gives Fowler no opportunity to get past. McGlade now, I think his tyres might be starting to suffer a little bit, which is why Tad is probably closing up, as they've got past Aidan Millward, who is one of the back markers now in this race. He's currently circulating in 23rd, and he goes to the grass after the exit of... Now, what's happened there? One of the SRR cars has been compromised, and I think that was Max Tad. So Millward was trying to keep out of the way. 5 laps to go. It's been tete-a-tete, mano-y-mano, all the way through this race between Chris Butcher and Sam Fowler. The gap has been anywhere between 1/10.5 to 3.5 tenths at the very, very most. They're about to come up to lap more drivers very shortly. Let's have a look at the replay here. Aidan Millward comes on and into the path of Max Tad. 2 BMWs into 1 bit of tarmac never goes, and Millward bounces off the barriers as a result. Now, just up ahead, I think that might be Sandro Ballesteros, who has just gotten out of the way of the leaders and will let Lewis McGlade get past. So Max Tad would have had a run at 3rd place. But again, I don't see how Fowler is going to be able to get past Chris Butcher for this, as in the race victory, because he's been trying everything. He's now got to hope that the backmarker side of things really does help him. Whether that's going to be the case is another question that needs to be answered altogether. Top 6 now covered by just under 7 seconds. That's one of the Rage Racing MGs getting out of the way. The leaders through. And I think that is Peter Bennett that has let them through so far. But the battle still. Here's the pairing of Slattery and Morby. And Slattery goes a bit clumsy into the inside of McLaren's, and then Morby just fires himself off and loses it. Fowler, in the meantime, still hasn't got an answer. And they're coming up to put a lap on Sandro Ballesteros. That would have been Bradley Brockies that they passed earlier on, so Ballesteros needs to get out of the way. Should do very shortly. and he goes towards the outside of Clark Curve. Nice driving from the Racing with Autism driver. And the back marker traffic seems to have worked in the favour of Chris Butcher, because he's making it work, and it's not so much impeding Sam Fowler, but Sam Fowler hasn't got a way to respond. He's tried everything apart from the kitchen sink to throw in the general direction of Chris Butcher, and that has not helped. Well, it hasn't worked. So I think in the next race itself, with all SRR Motorsport cars on soft tyres, it could be a completely different proposition altogether. So we come through Clark Curve. Looks like Fowler's a bit closer this time. And he's actually coming at the slipstream early, gone towards the top part, and he's switched it back. Is he going to try and go for it? He can't dive through on that gap there, because Butcher made sure there was nothing there whatsoever. As they go up the Haywoods Hill for the final time, through Druids, down the dip, down towards Graham Hill Bend, before getting onto the Cooper Straight for the final time. And the lights are ablaze on the front of Chris Butcher's Astra to say to the guys in front, please stay out of the way, because it has been nip and tuck the majority of this race. But round the final corner, through Clark Curve, comes the 65 of Chris Butcher, who's put an absolute defensive masterclass on Sam Fowler to take the win here in race 2. There's Scott Mitchell. He's been battling away with Bell in the number 5. And Bell's going to take it at the flag by next to nothing. That was literally a tenth of a second between the two. So Chris Butcher takes the second race victory here at Brands Hatch, ahead of Sam Fowler, as more of the drivers make their way across the start-finish line to finish the race, which will involve the likes of Chris Wilson, who ended up 13th. So Butcher takes the win ahead of Sam Fowler. Lewis McGlade, Max Tad, and Ben Hamlet round out the top 5. 3 SRR Motorsport BMWs in the top 5, and they've got their option tyres coming in the next race. Watch out for them. Dan Kell from Sancho Simsport was the second best place of the drivers in the three-tier Focus squad. In 6th, ahead of Mike Bell from Smart Power Racing. Scott Mitchell from Kings Racing in the 22 finished ahead of Matthew Clipp, who finished 9th in the 92 MG from Cadan Casual Apex. Rami Autosports' Robert Strachan in the 36 Subaru Levorg rounded out the top 10. Alexander van der Voorde in 11th place ahead of Daniel Slattery from Rage Racing, with Chris Wilson from Camsport rounding out the top 13. Phil Morby, Scott Sovic, Kieran Shanks, Ben Willis, Sean King, Max Spooner and Ben Brown round out the top 20. Sandro Ballesteros in 21st ahead of Aidan Millward. Brandy Brockies, a DNF from Peter Bennett. Daniel Hydewood finished classified in 25th ahead of Costas Avram, Matt Richards and Jack Nichols. Well, one more race to go, and it's still all to play for here at round 2 of the Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Series. Time once again for racing here at Brands Hatch for the third and final encounter for round 2 of the 2020 Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Championship. So very shortly they will get things underway with regards to the formation lap. 28 cars set to get into battle for the final time before we head to Silverstone National in just 2 weeks from tonight on the 23rd of June. So your grid for race 3 here at Brands Hatch is as follows. Alexander van der Voorde will start on pole position ahead of Robert Strachan. Matthew Klipp and Scott Mitchell, that's row 2. Mike Bell and Dan Kell, that is row 3, with Ben Hamlet, Max Tad, Lewis McGlade and Sam Fowler rounding out the top 10. Chris Butcher, who won race 2, will start on 11th on the inside of row 6 alongside Daniel Slattery, with Chris Wilson, Phil Morby, Scott Sovic, Kieran Shanks, Ben Willis, Sean King, Max Spooner and Ben Brown rounding out the top 20. They're followed by Sandro Ballesteros, Aidan Millward, Bradley Brockies, Peter Bennett, Daniel Hyde, Costas Avram, Matt Richards and Jack Nichols rounding out the 28 strong. So we're just going to wait for the drivers to make their way onto the grid for the final time, with Richards and Nichols bringing up the rear, the 28 strong contingent. They're all just trying to get into position. Very difficult to get the car away properly with the camber that slopes to the right-hand side here at Brands Hatch. Looks like we are off and away for the final time as Matt Richards bogs down. Jack Nichols on the other end. Oh, now someone's been spat out of the back part of the field. As it is 2 by 2, a little bit further down the order through the bottom part of the top 10 as everyone's trying to scrabble for position here. Shanks has run wide. Or is that Strachan, I think, that ran a bit wide coming out of Druids and going down into the dip as one of the BMWs goes sideways. The back end of Morby's car goes a bit skyward. As again, Scott Mitchell, unfortunately, I don't know if he was on the receiving end of some contact there. He went wide coming out of Surtees. And that has dropped him down to around about 19th position. Jack Nichols, in the meantime, has gone up to P16. Whilst avoiding all the carambolage that was happening to his right-hand side at the start. And there is Nichols. He's up into P15. Battling away with Sean King from Cam Sports. Also looks like Ben Willis in the Drag Racing Subaru. Scott Mitchell trying to mount a counter-offensive against Costas Avram. So Van der Voorde leading ahead of Matthew Klipp from Cadan Casual Apex in the 92 MG6. There's Jack Nichols trying to close on Aidan Millward. And that was on the approach through the Cooper Straight down towards Surtees. Nichols isn't quite past yet, but he's got a good run coming out of Clark Curve. Best lap time of Alexander van der Voorde, 48.281. Nichols up to P13 now as he gets past. Brakes a little bit later than Millward going through into Paddock Hill Bend. And as a result of that, Millward being challenged now by Sean King. So just keeping an eye on lap times. Matthew Klipp has set the fastest lap of the race of 47.815 in the MG. And he's closed to Van der Voorde to around about 0.3 of a second behind the back bumper of the Focus. There's Chris Butcher. And here are the leaders. Klipp is bringing along Mike Bell and Dan Kell now. Here's Kieran Shanks. Shanks won race 1 earlier on this evening, as Mike Bell puts in a 47.802, but Kieran Shanks in the Subaru is on a flyer. There's the move for second. Bell up the inside of Van der Voorde as Clip takes the lead now from the 38 Focus. So Kieran Shanks puts in a 47.495. Dan Kell on the same lap put in a 47.799, and that is quite a bit of charging from quite a few drivers. Nichols now up to P13. So at the moment, top 10 at the minute is Clip, Bell, Van der Voorde, Kell, Shanks, Fowler, Strachan, Butcher, Morby, Sovic. That's your top 10. Jack Nichols is running in the high 47.9s. And he's closing on Daniel Slattery. He's like pretty much with him, I think, very shortly. So the move for 12th might happen. So Clip now trying to break away from Mike Bell. As here comes Dan Kell on the inside of Alexander Van der Voorde. It's Ford versus Ford. Here's Nichols. He's got past for P12, past Slattery. And that was through on the approach via the Cooper Straight into Surtees, through McLaren, through Clearways, now through the right-hander at Clark Curve. So Nichols on a mission. Clip is trying to break the toe of Bell, and that is for the lead of the race. And if you just look on the left-hand side at the timing, the top 16 covered by just over 9.7 seconds. As there's more argy-bargy a bit further down, as Kell, I think, has got past Van der Voorde. That is the case. Through the Cooper Straight, down into Surtees. So Kieran Shanks now looking to make it 2 podiums. There's Van der Voorde, and he's got Fowler. There's Strachan in the other of the Frammy Autosport Subaru Levorg GTs. One in 3rd, one in 7th at the moment. Butcher, Morby, Sovic. And again, there are drivers that are absolutely throwing these cars around like nobody's business. And several drivers currently consistently running in the high 47s. Here's Scott Mitchell around the outside of Sean King. Did he make the move? Well, here's Costas Avram trying to go through and thread the eye through the needle. Oh, he clatters into the barriers, and Scott Mitchell manages to keep himself planted and keeps out of the way to a point. But he did get partially collected there. Sam Fowler getting a bit tail happy going through the exit of Paddock Hill Bend as he's run on the back bumper of Alexander Van der Voorde and has got the inside run as Van der Voorde closes the door. Strachan around the outside at Druids. But now Matthew Clip has got a lead of over 1.6 seconds from Mike Bell. Let's have a look at the replay. So Mitchell runs wide. Avram tries to thread the eye through the needle. Mitchell comes onto the circuit. Now, was Avram going right all the time? I'm not 100% sure. That angle gives me some insight, but I don't want to make that call. Obviously, I'm not a race director, so I'll leave it to the race director about that in that respect. But there is Sam Fowler, and he has dropped Alexander Van der Voorde. He's going to try and go after Dan Kell from Sancho Simsport in the number 89 Ford Focus. Kieran Shanks is running in the 47.6s on that last lap, and that's the quickest out of anybody. He has been very consistently quick. Go on board with Jack Nichols in the King's Racing Mercedes, and he has closed onto Scott Sovic. And just up ahead is Ben Hamlet. Then also, I think you've got Morby, Strachan. I think even Butcher's at the front of that. So Jack Nichols, from 28th on the grid, is battling for what is going to be effectively, at highest, 7th place. It just depends. There's still 14 laps still to go, and Nichols has got the inside run on Sovic, has he? No, he's kept it nice and calm and composed there. Looked to find the gap, but had to move accordingly in order to make sure that he kept his optimum position. So he's now behind Strachan in the number 36 Subaru, and Nichols is going to get the run out of Graham Hill, up through into Surtees, and he goes side by side with the Subaru, through into McLaren, through into Clearways. He's going to get a good run coming out of the corner. There's a Fowler on the back bumper of Dan Kell. That's for P4. And Fowler yet to get past the Focus, but he's got the switchback coming through Paddock Hill Bend as Nichols trying to find his way back past Strachan for P11. Kell on the inside of Fowler still, and the Sancho Sim Sport Ford Focus still keeps ahead for the minute of the SRR BMW. Now, all three SRR cars have their option tyres on, the soft compound. And even though he hasn't got the option tyres on, Jack Nichols has been flying through this course like a man possessed. Just keeping an eye on some lap times at the moment. And Kieran Shanks has been running in the 47.7s again. So he's really been trying to close up, and he's got clip in his sights. So the MG, as Nichols runs wide, coming out of the corner. And that is ahead of the number 24 Rage Racing MG6 GT of Daniel Slattery. So some great battles up and down the order here. Running order at the minute on lap number 13 is there is a very forlorn BMW that's got damage on the front end. Got a feeling that might be one of the E-Team Brit cars. Oh, Morby's gone round. Nichols has gone Matthias Ekstrom rally crossing on the outside of Clark Curve to avoid, and now is in P11. Slattery to the outside of the Mercedes. Oh, Slattery loses it a little bit, gets a tank slapper and nearly goes into the path of Morby. So the most gained positions, I think, in any one race, that is from Jack Nichols at the moment. And just up ahead, he's got Robert Strachan and Scott Sovic. So that has been a pretty good charge. Morby has recovered to P13 behind Slattery down the Cooper Straight. And now the top three covered by just under a second. So Kieran Shanks is leading now. He took the race one victory earlier on this evening. Matthew Clipp in second, just half a second adrift. And then it's a further 0.7 back to Mike Bell in the Smile Power Racing Astra number 5. So running order at the moment. Shanks has a half a second lead. Here is Morby trying to go up the inside of Slattery for position and goes for P12 and gets it. Nice and cleanly done. Good spatial awareness. And here comes Scott Mitchell in the second of the King's Racing Mercedes A45s in the 22. So Shanks trying to break away from Clip. Bell in third. Fowler, Kell, Van der Voorde. Ben Hamlet gets past Chris Butcher. There's Mike Bell battling away with Sam Fowler. Fowler looks to be a bit more planted through Paddock Hill Bend. Up the Halewoods Hill. He's going towards the outside on the approach into Druids. He's going to keep it planted there. Get the switch back. But it doesn't really help in the approach down to Graham Hill Bend. But he's going to send it. Is he going to send it? He doesn't. No. That was very well timed there by Mike Bell. He knew what Fowler was going to do and instantly responded and cut the door off. But then with these soft option tyres, you don't want to push too hard too quickly or get brought up into a battle, as Bell now has Fowler up the inside. Fowler's going to have the run coming through the corner. And he's going to have third just ahead as they go on to lap number 17 out of 24. And Fowler makes the move stick. Oh, goes sideways, runs wide onto the gravel. And that allows Mike Bell to go past once again to retake P3. Now we're on board with Ben Willis in the 85 Drag Racing Subaru Levorg, just on the back bumper of the number 22 of Kings Racing's very own Scott Mitchell. And Chris Butcher now gets past Van der Voorde. And then the position swap yet again. So Clip now has a 2.6 second deficit back from Kieran Shanks, who could become the first double winner, I believe, of the Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Championship in just its second round alone. Mike Bell has dropped off slightly as well by about 1.3 seconds as Ben Willis going towards the outside of Paddock Hill. Trying to see if he can get the run on Scott Mitchell, but Mitchell has a good pace in the Mercedes coming out of the corner. Through Druids, nicely tightly taken by the pair of them. You can just see that he's having to sort of brake occasionally, and the speeds that we're going to hit going through into Surtees, around about 176 kilometers per hour before putting on the brakes. And it's about slowing the car down, controlling it, 95 kilometers an hour. And here is the battle for third place again. And it's not just Bell and Fowler this time. It's also, I think that is Dan Kell just behind them. So Dan Kell really has been making some good inroads here. Ben Willis trying to go towards the outside of Scott Mitchell through into Druids in the Subaru. But Mitchell still keeping in front for the minute as they head down the Cooper Straight into Surtees. Mitchell will have the inside line going into McLaren, which he does. Willis has to then react and give the Mercedes enough room. Go through clearways through into Clark Curve. Mitchell still has the run on Willis. In terms of the tyre compounds that are being used, 13 of the drivers in this race are using them. Just going to see, Ben Willis is on the option tyre. He's on the soft and he's gone up the inside now. Through Druids, nearly loses the back end there, as that is Hamlet up the inside of Kell, through into Surtees, through into McLaren, and then Kell runs wide. Hamlet up the inside, all the focus sideways. So whether he might have had a little bit of Rubbings racing there from Ben Hamlet, I'm not too sure, but the leader checking away again. Kieran Shanks is leading the way, and he had a dominant display last time out. Well, 2 races ago. So it's not been easy for him. We've had multiple retirements, unfortunately. We've had Aidan Millward, whose BMW was the one that had the front end damage. Lewis McGlade, Costas Avram, Peter Bennett and Max Tad. So we're down to 23 drivers, which is being rounded up by Sandro Ballesteros, Max Spooner and Bradley Brockies. All from E-Team Brit. And Jack Nichols has got up into P11 with around 4 laps remaining from 28th on the grid. As here is Bell, Kell and Hamlet. And Hamlet up the inside of Kell going through into Paddock Hill Bend. Going to get the run, and it's going to be nearly 3 abreast if Hamlet was able to have enough run going up the Hellwoods Hill, and he's keeping it around the outside. That is brave from Kell there, and he's got past Bell around the outside of Druids. Hamlet's going to go up the inside into Graham Hill Bend and makes the moves. That's the changes for 3rd and 4th respectively. We're fast approaching the conclusion of round 2 here at Brands Hatch. There's been some interesting action, I would say, is probably the term that I'm going to use here, is Dan Kell and Hamlet side by side. Hamlet up the inside, through into P4, through Paddock Hill, makes the move stick through Druids. Butcher, in the meantime, is battling away with teammate Sovic, and then they've got Phil Morby just behind in the Subaru Levorg. That's the battle for 8th, 9th and 10th, and just up ahead they've got Alexander van der Voorde. Daniel Slattery's been swapping positions again with Jack Nichols, so the pair are about 0.4 of a second apart of each other. As one of the E-Team Brit cars gets out of the way, van der Voorde with a bit of a forlorn rear bumper, as in a bit of damage there. So the next time he comes around, Kieran Shanks will take the penultimate crossing across the start-finish line, as Butcher battling away with van der Voorde. That's for P8, actually P7. Butcher's got the move done. Morby's got past Sovic for 9th. And just up ahead that's Mike Bell. Mike Bell has fell into the clutches of his teammate quite considerably, and it looks like team tactics are being used there because Butcher has been let past quite easily. But one of the biggest rules is you can race anyone, you can race your teammates, but don't take out your teammates. So we're on to the final lap here. 24 laps of racing action here at the 1.198 mile, 1.929 kilometres circuit here at Brands Hatch, as Bradley Brockie's calmly just keeping out of the way of what's going on because there are battles for position. So very shortly, he's got about a 6.8 second lead, is that Kieran Shanks will take a second win in one race meeting, and it's their debut in this. And here he is, Kieran Shanks, 2 wins out of 3 here at Brands Hatch. The Framey Autosport Subaru Levorg GT number 16 takes the second win of the evening here at Brands Hatch. Sam Fowler takes second place in the number 27 SRR BMW 125M Sport. And it was close of a top 10 finish for Jack Nichols from Kings Racing in the number 29. Finishing in 11th place, having started stone dead last. Kieran Shanks takes a second win here. Obviously, all results here this evening are provisional, pending any sporting and judicial matters and technical side of things. But Kieran Shanks wins race 3 here at Brands Hatch, which concludes rounds 2 out of 10 for the Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Championship. Sam Fowler in second. Matthew Clipp rounds out the podium in the Cadan Casual Apex 92 MG, making it 3 different brands on the podium. Ben Hamlet makes it another SRR Motorsport BMW in 4th, ahead of Dan Kell, the best of the Zanjo Simsport finishers in the 89. Chris Butcher in the Smile Power Racing Astra keeps his title hopes alive, even though we're in the early stages, in the 65 in 6th place. Ahead of Mike Bell, Alexander van der Voorde, Scott Sovic, and Phil Morby rounding out the top 10. In 11th place, one of the standout charges through the field, Jack Nichols from Kings Racing in the 29 Mercedes takes 11th, ahead of Ben Willis. Scott Mitchell, Jack Nichols' teammate in the 22 Mercedes, would finish P13, ahead of Daniel Slattery. Matt Richards, Robert Strachan, Sean King, Ben Brown, Daniel Hyde, and Chris Wilson from Camsport rounding out the top 20. The 3 cars of E-Team Brit, Sandro Ballesteros, Max Spooner, and Bradley Brockies rounded out the 23 finishers. And we had 5 unfortunate DNFs. Aidan Millward, Lewis McGlade, Costas Avram, Peter Bennett, and Max Tad. Well, that was an enthralling Brands Hatch Indy meeting here for the second round of the 2020 Virtual Motorsport Online Touring Car UK Championship here. It's been a pleasure commentating on the action, as always. Don't forget to join us in just 2 weeks' time. We head to Silverstone National Circuit on the 23rd of June 2020 for round 3. Please don't forget to follow all the relevant social media channels for the Virtual Motorsport Online accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please, for those, whichever stream you're watching, if you're watching on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you in just 2 weeks' time for round 3 of the VMO Touring Car UK Championship. This is Alex Goldschmidt on behalf of myself and also our broadcast director, Mike Yao. This is us signing off. Have a good evening. See you in 2 weeks.